Well, welcome to another episode of How I Am Building This, where we interview startup founders that are in the thick of building their business. We learn from their mistakes and get practical tips to ensure that we keep growing. Today, we have Binny from Kognitos. Hey, Binny, how are you?
Pratik, yeah, good, doing well. Thanks for inviting me here, and hello to all your viewers.
Well, thank you so much for, of course, joining in today. But Binny, before we, of course, jump into Kognitos, I just really want to say how much of a fan I am of you. We were, I think, connected around 21 by I think Zach at Ventures. I've seen you grow your business from the sidelines, and it's just been so exciting to watch how you've grown your business from that first video, that you sent me to now. So
yeah, I mean, also thanks to a bunch of people who have helped along the way, including yourself. I mean, you helped me get a few people who helped me in the initial days of the go-to-market movement.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Binny, I'd love to know, who is Binny? Where did you grow up? What got you from IIT Kanpur to to UFI?
All right. So who am I? Well, I'm just a person who loves computer science. It's been my passion ever since I was probably even before a teenager, like even 12-year-old. I was writing my first program, and I just enjoyed the ability to build something that flexibly. I mean, if you think of what computers are, they are flexible machines. Prior to computers, there was a calculator. Now we have iPhone that does everything. It's a GPS, it's a calculator, right? So these are flexible machines, but then that also comes with a challenge. You have to harness that flexibility to make it become what you want, and the power that you got in making these machines be what you want, that was radical. I remember writing my first video game, tic-tac-toe, when I was 12, and it was on a handheld Casio that my dad had given me, and it had 4 kilobytes of memory, and it allowed assembly language and basic language, and there was no internet, there was no Google or YouTube, there was no Ethernet connection or USB connection. In fact, when I had to create a new program, I would copy out my code on a piece of paper, and I just found it actually in my library, that notebook where I used to write 679 characters and then write the program, and I know, okay, those many characters are now freed up in my computer, and I can go write something else to play with. It was such a fascinating thing for me. I grew up in India in a small town called Ranchi, and then it was a very multicultural environment where people from all walks of life from different parts of the country had come together, and a bunch of parents who were engineers. So technology was top of mind, and when I showed something off, like, hey, look, I made something, people were like, oh, what is this? And you felt good about yourself, like you're building stuff. And that brought me to IIT Kanpur, computer science. I still think that what I learned there is helping me even today. There are some fundamentals of computer science that have survived for many, many decades. And last 20, 25 years of my career, I've been, getting benefit of all of that training. And then last probably 3 years or so, I'm forcing myself to forget all of it. And that's the biggest eye-opening thing that happened during pandemic, where I realized that whatever I've been doing with computer science is probably, has reached the limit of what it can do. Now we have to go into a different era of thinking about machines and humans, and how machines will mimic more of what humans do than in the past. So instead of forcing humans to learn the language of machines, now the time has come to make the machine learn the language of humans. And we are sitting at that, the beginning of that revolution. ChatGPT is there and all of that, and that's gotten me super excited. Like, let's go back to basics, first principles, and start to learn computer science with a new eye, So to me, it's like I'm restarting my career, frankly, and forgetting everything about computer science and see how we can do stuff. And it's amazing. I mean, I'm so excited about the future.
That's awesome. Was there a pivotal moment growing up in Ranchi where you were like, you know what, entrepreneurship could be something that I could venture into one day?
No, no. So, I look back, we were all very focused on the near term goal, and the near term goal would be 2 years out maximum. Like, okay, I'm in this grade, I want to get this kind of score to get into that school or college, and after that I need to be in IIT this rank to get into IIT Kanpur. It's like 2 year ahead thinking at max. I don't know what I'll do, but I did know that I have to compete to survive in a country of 1 billion people. I mean, yeah, I can see the ribbon and I can see 1 million people running in the same direction. What do you think? You don't think about, I need to be an entrepreneur. I need to get to that ribbon before the door closes behind me, right? Um, so that's the entire training. Like, how do you compete where you have to be accelerating all the time. You don't have time and luxury to stop. And that's similar to what Silicon Valley is all about. It's like you constantly trying to go faster and faster, and that's the training. So, and it so happens you end up, you know creating a company but there has to be a moment that shakes you, and it did happen to me. Like, why did I even start a company? I'll talk about that. um, Before this, I was at Nutanix for 8 years and had a great run. We started off with a small team, IPO and beyond. I was CTO, did a bunch. I thought I had did enough and contributed to society through my own means, computer science. Looking back at my career, I was in security and distributed systems and storage and networking, and I was doing cloud automation, hybrid cloud, and I thought, yeah, that's good. So I thought I'll take some time off, spend some time with family, and we were in the house. Pandemic hit, and I was working. Just we were building a house and helping. And taking truly a break. But even in that break, I was working 8 hours a day, just building the house. Okay, which is fine. I loved that part. I like building stuff in general, whether it's physical or virtual. Now pandemic hit, and my kids are like, oh, the school is closed. My son was 12 years old, and he said, I don't know what to do. And I said, hey, why don't you learn programming? When I was their age, I was doing something like that. And like, he said, oh, what do I do? I said, make a game. So told him to make a game. Couple of days, he comes back later and says, hey, I made a game. And he had made tic-tac-toe.
Oh, no way.
It's like, cool. And I was like, really, I was proud then. Okay, I did something. I slept and I woke up, and then I realized that I had done the same thing at the same age. And I was like, okay, how long did I take to do that? And it was actually 2 days. I was like, okay, so what happened in the last 30 years? And I'm giving you a hint of how dated I am, but in the last 30 years, writing your first program independent of the language takes 2 days. And I just had one manual to read, and nothing else, nobody to ask, no Google, nothing. And here, even in spite of all of that, and I went back and said, why did you take so long? And he's like, dude, like, I thought you were happy with me yesterday. And I said, no, I'm just genuinely curious. He said, no, it was very hard. And I said, why is it hard? So I said, let's do another project together. And this time I'll see. We came up with, okay, we'll figure out if a number is prime or not. Right? And I asked my son, do you know the logic? He said, yeah. I mean, he's in 6th grade and good at math. So, okay, write the program. And we're staring at a blank screen. He said, let me Google. I said, no, write it. I mean, I want to see if you can do it, because back in my day, there was no internet. I can give you the Python cheat sheet, right? It's like, I can't do it. I said, okay, there's something called pseudocode, right? You write it, you write just the outline as if you are explaining it to, say, a younger sister. and these are notes for yourself to remember. And he said, okay, and then started writing. In 5 minutes we had that done. That's awesome. Okay, so now let's take the first line and convert. If the number is 1, then it's not prime, it's a convention. So 5 minutes we could write that, no problem. Then the other one was getting all the factors in a loop. The loop is a big challenge, because x equal to x plus 1 is something in school they've been taught x and x cancel out. So I had to explain. After explaining that, why is x plus 1 equal to x not allowed? And I didn't have a proper answer. Like, I don't know, convention, like everything I've kept on saying convention. And then he said, why does the same thing mean different things every time it runs? That's the variable changing. That is very foreign for humans. If there is text, we know it means one thing. We read a novel, we don't read the same paragraph every time, assuming now it will mean something different. And I kept pushing. I said, no, think like a machine, think like a machine. At some point, it was too much pushing. And he's like, Dad, I don't like this. I don't want to program. And that was a moment where I said, what's happened? Right? I'm not able to help. And I remembered why I got that Casio thing. So my dad was a draftsman, and in a factory there's furnace and everybody's working, sweating, and he has a nice office. He just draws on a piece of paper and say, go build this machine. So it's this awesome job. And he comes back one day and says, Binny, you should not do what I'm doing. I said, what? He says, I saw AutoCAD today, and whatever I do in a day, it does in 2 minutes. And then out comes from the plotter the whole thing, and it's perfect. So you should not do what I'm doing for a living. And then he gives me that thing after a week, right? Wow. And I'm like, so what am I doing to my son? And that was when I said, I have done nothing in life, right? So that's how Kognitos started. I wanted to build a system where the machine does not force you to learn its language. I mean, because that we have tried, last 5 decades we have tried, nothing has improved. We have to do something different. We have to change the machine. And I spent 6 months myself trying to figure out what it is. I know it's an extremely hard problem. People have tried, but I had nothing else, to do. This was my mission. And I think that's what made me a founder. I had to get this thing solved.
That is such a cool story. And it's so personal. It's amazing.
It has to be, right? Yeah.
So, Binny, now you've raised 2 rounds. How did you, go about figuring if these were the investors that you really wanted to work with?
Honestly, I built the prototype and this was working. It could do a bunch of stuff. This was COVID time. So I would write the logic in English and it would run that over text message with somebody, like COVID screening. And so I had COVID screening in English. I had examples where people are moving around in a shop floor and you can ask questions. Are there 2 people in the grocery section? All of that it would answer. Natural language. I had awesome stuff. And I showed it to a bunch of VCs. They're saying, nah, this won't work. I said, why? A lot of people have tried natural language stuff. It has failed, which is a fact. And then a lot of the observations were that AI has diseconomies of scale, meaning you can solve 10 problems with one model. And now if you expand and expand, the model becomes like a water balloon. You solve this, you break this, all that. And I was like, yeah, but this is different. This is an interpreter. Interpreters have economies of scale. Like Python became more powerful over the years as more and more libraries got made. So it's not an AI thing, but I found it hard to explain. And then I was looking for people who believe in the overall vision.
Got it.
That the language of programming has to evolve rather than, oh, this is hard or this is whatever. And that was my thing. So my even advice to other people like who are looking for initial founders, just go for the person who truly believes in the future that you believe more than anything else. And so I found Ashmeet from Engineering Capital, and he's like, when I see what you're saying, the hair in my arm is, I have goosebumps right now. I say, okay, that's the guy, because now you see the vision. I'm saying that's good, and all of this, Pratik, is before ChatGPT was real, right?
Yep.
Nobody knew that could happen. Now it's in hindsight, everybody says obviously, right?
Sure.
But back then it was extremely hard because of so many failures in AI for the last 5 decades. But that's what I would say. Look for somebody who genuinely thinks that is going to happen. This is the future, and trusts you to try your best to go get there. So that's what happened.
Got it. So on your website, Binny, you say that Kognitos, and I'm just paraphrasing it. It says that Kognitos is the world's first combination of generative AI and logical execution built to bring the power of AI to all enterprises. What does that mean? What is the pain you are solving, and for whom?
Yeah. The pain that we are solving is, I'm trying to ask this fundamental question. Do we really need developers? And I'm a developer. The only reason developers exist in the world is because the language the business speaks and the language that the machine understands is different. That's the only reason. Okay. And developers are the translators in between. What do they translate? They translate ambiguous English into unambiguous machine code. That's their job.
Yep.
That is a massive pain point today. Why? Because the business side is far more in number. Like, today, 0.5% of the world's population can call themselves a developer. 199 out of 200 people depend on that 1 out of 100 or 1 out of 200 to channel what they want to do. Businesses run 100% on computers today. So if you have to change business, you have to change something in a computer, some configuration, some menu, something. You need a technical developer kind of architect kind of guy to go change it, who understands, oh, if I do this, that might break, and so on and so forth. So all of the innovation in the world in businesses is bottlenecked behind a very small fraction of society who are making a lot of money as well. I mean, Silicon Valley is all that. So I'm not complaining, but I'm saying we are living in the dark ages of computer science. This is the definition of dark ages. There is a language for which literacy is literally 0.5%, right? And everybody needs to use this language. That is dark ages. How can we come out of these dark ages? And I've been struggling, and my light bulb moment was, no, it's not changing the language a little bit. Like, we had C, COBOL, Fortran, Python, now Rust. No, that has not been helping. We have to make a quantum jump in the language so that more people can be made literate in this language. And what better language than the language they already know, right? Yep. So that's the direction where we are going. So the pain point is about removing the bottleneck of developers from the innovation cycle. And that will make even large companies run at the speed of startups with the rigor that large companies want. And when we talk about generative AI plus logical reasoning, it's extremely important to understand businesses made computers. Computers are made for businesses. For one reason, humans used to make mistakes and they were slow. So we made a machine that was flexible and it could do whatever you wanted to do without making mistakes and very fast. Okay, good. Out comes generative AI. And what's the first thing we see about it? It makes mistakes. Just like humans. To err is human, to err is ChatGPT, right? I mean, so that's the thing. What you need in business is a combination of the two. You should have a logical layer, an interpreter, a deterministic system that underlies everything. And on top of it, you can layer in generative AI, but everything that it outputs, the logical layer is validating. So the only antidote to hallucination is logic. I mean, that's what, when I'm dreaming, I'm hallucinating. Yeah. When I wake up, my logical brain wakes up and says, oh, that didn't make sense. So what was I dreaming about? That's exactly what we are saying. And that's what we are bringing in. There's intuition, there is logic, and business wants to favor logic more than intuition, but intuition is really important for making decisions on corner cases. So wrap the intuition with the antidote of logic, and that's what Kognitos is.
That's amazing. So how did you go about finding your like first few customers, that were willing to pay you to solve that problem?
Well, you follow the pain, right? Yeah. I was talking to many people. I also talked to you, and you introduced me to a bunch of people. And I'm like, okay, let me talk to people who sell these RPA solutions. And with some of the introductions I had, okay, I talked to the sellers. What have you seen? And they've seen hundreds of these customers. So, okay, so tell me 5 people where you sold, and after that they were unhappy with you because you sold them with some promise and it didn't work out. Let me go talk to them. I say, okay, so you use this RPA solution. What did you not like about it? Say, oh, I was promised this and this didn't work, or I thought it will be, I just automate it and it'll work. No, every day it breaks on me. That's where you start learning the real pain points and say, okay, what if I can solve that problem? You say, okay, yeah, show it to me, right? So say, okay. So that's, just talking to customers. And first, the way I used is I go through the sellers, yeah, and get to know the people who didn't like the experience with the previous generation technology. That's where you truly get. But luckily for us, it was not hard to find those kind of people who are unhappy. I would say almost like 40% of people were unhappy. And now, today, when they see what can be done in the world of generative AI, almost everybody's unhappy.
Well, so you get your first few customers. How do you, how do you build that feedback loop with them so that you can build faster and keep iterating?
So this I learned in my previous company as well, right? You shouldn't have too many layers between, at least in the early days, between the people building the product and the people who are using the product at the customer side. On both sides, you could have a manager or maybe, a few layers, but don't do that. Connect the people building to the people using. And we do it through Teams, Slack, WhatsApp, doesn't matter. Don't worry about exposing all your weaknesses and stuff like that. It's fine. Anyway, you're solving a problem that there is no other solution for. I mean, at least in our case, and even in my previous, if you're building a truly game changer, you don't have to worry about that. There's no better alternative. So you just go talk to your customers and look, here is the engineer and here's your user. Connect them, make them best friends forever, and then let them figure it out. And although, the company might have a vision, or this is where I want to go and this is the reason why, but solve the pain point, right? And if the pain point is, oh, this needs to work behind a VPN, that's not visionary, but you better solve it, right? So that's how initially, that's at least how I do, is that you want to solve the pain point that the customer articulated first. And then you know, one customer, 2 customers, then you're figuring out, okay, what is the, is this still aligned with what you thought the vision was? Right? And if it's yes, good. If no, change it. Okay. But in our case, the general direction was right. But as we did more, we realized more and more of the pain points and why. I'll tell you one very interesting observation is that who touches the automation tool is so important, because if the automation tool requires an IT expert, the pay grade of that person is something, and then the company can afford only a few of them, and those few people are extremely burdened, and then they are like, I don't want any other more automation in the company because I'll be so much busier. Okay, but if the tool can be made accessible for the people who are at the lowest level, they are paid the least in the company, but there are hundreds of them, maybe in India or Philippines or whatever. But they are the experts on the business process. The IT guy does not understand the business process. Oh, when an invoice comes in, the number is missing, what do I do? They know that they talk to the manager, and the manager has an Excel sheet in some Google Drive, and you just look it up there and just put it and go on, right? IT guy doesn't know. So if the tool can be accessed by them, you have reduced the cost of maintenance runtime by 5x already. So those kind of things. So now it's like, okay, let's go talk to them and make them our users. And what they'll come and tell you, they won't ask for 20 features. They'll ask like, hey, make it clean. I just want very simple, make it look like even my mailbox. Doesn't matter. Extremely simple. So learning from your users is very important initially.
Yeah, that's for sure. So today you count some very, very prominent enterprises as your customers. How do they find you?
There are so many different motions we have in trying to find them. We have had all sorts of inbound versus outbound. So initially, of course, you start off with people you know, and then the connections, and say, that we did. But very early on, we started off with another company, RevBoss, that sends outbound emails for you. And we had great success. Of course, you have to figure out what the sequencing would be of the messaging. And if the message that you have actually talks about a pain point, people will, we were getting around 0.5% response, like people asking for a meeting. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. So that was one approach. And the other approach is LinkedIn. We had an SDR. So initially, internally, going through LinkedIn and telling people and giving some information about the new technology, what's the next generation, what's generative AI. We were in the education phase for some time, like what's ChatGPT, what is it going to do? Because we were using this technology for a year and a half before it suddenly exploded. So we were also educating customers. And in LinkedIn, we've gotten customers by genuinely advising them, look, hey, you want to do this, you go and use that technology versus this technology. So you become good citizens basically there. So that's another way of doing it, right? The third way, obviously, we have salespeople who that's their job. I mean, go look at your network and go cold call on people, roll up your sleeves, whatever happens. And then last quarter or so, we've been getting inbound now because all the events that we do. So we've been in IAW, now in VentureBeat, now we are at TechCrunch in a week. TechCrunch District, we are on the AI Center stage. We are the platinum sponsor. So there's a huge amount of interest that comes because of that. People look at that and say, oh, Kognitos is the leader. Let me go and talk to them and see if they can help me in this pain point. So I think it's all of the above kind of thing. There's no one thing that you should do, especially in an early startup. You should try everything and then double down on what works. And what works will keep changing over time as well.
Absolutely, yeah. So talking about like your inbound side of it, what are like, 2 or 3 pillars of your inbound strategy that you're seeing has been definitely paying off besides events?
One thing is blogs.
Okay.
We have started doing podcasts. Podcasts is good quality podcasts. I mean, not things where you're trying to sell your product. No, genuinely educate the people, and they would love to come back to your website for more. Then obviously they'll say, okay, let me also talk. I mean, the topics have to be related to the pain points that people are seeing. If they know that you at least understand their pain point, then they're willing to talk and say, what can you do? And I mean, the way I look at it is like, I'll tell them, okay, this is where you need to use UiPath, and this is where you use automation anywhere, and this is where you could use Kognitos. I mean, just genuinely advise them on what's right to do. And so that's one thing. Blogs are there, podcasts we have started. Then on the website content and working on SEO, I mean, that's harder, but that's something to do. And then advertisements. Okay. But there are many platforms through which you can do outbound advertisements. Go on Google, and so you have to target various profiles of people. In our case, it's actually very simple. Most of the people who already have spent time with automation are the right people for us to talk to. We are not trying to tell people, hey, you need to automate. No, if we are trying to do that now, it's too late. I mean, they should have been automating. We are talking to people who have already done it for a few years, and now they know all the what they can do and what they could not do. And then we go and say, okay, from the could not do bucket, that's where we'll come and help you. That's how we land. And then if you like us, then you'll already expand, and we'll do the rest of the stuff for you as well. So these are the areas, and obviously you have to be on top of what's happening in the industry. So you can't take 3-month-old message and continue to, you have to keep on adapting it, and create content that makes sense for the day.
Yeah, that's for sure. You also touched upon outbound. What does that look like for you today?
It's good. Outbound, right now we have a couple of SDRs, and mostly it's digital. So you target people looking at their backgrounds, and also sometimes we get this information again through one of our investors. They have built own software where it can figure out what are the people these companies are hiring. So that's a good signal. So they know, so you see, oh, they're hiring people around this automation space or around this, then you know that they're investing there. Then you go there and do that. Or you have to look at the people who are there. How long have they been in that role? Are they looking to change something or no, right? So are they engaging publicly? Are they themselves on other podcasts?
Okay.
So in a startup, you're looking for the early adopters, the risk takers. And so that's the profile you got to look for. And SDRs are good at, looking at that. And then you say, and then you go target them.
Yeah. Binny, all of us have made a ton of mistakes building businesses, right? What are some of those, those like mistakes that you made early on as you were, scaling?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important thing for a business is actually people, right? So the biggest mistakes would be around the people side. Technology and all of that is, I have a very open mind because I derive what we need to build based on pain, not based on, oh, I have a background in AI and therefore I need to use that hammer everywhere.
Yeah.
In fact, as I said, I started this, I want to unlearn everything. I just want to think from the lens of a non-developer and say, how would I solve that problem? Everything is like that right now. I don't put on my CS hat at all. If I was a teenager, how would I do that, right? And so anyway, so that's that. Technology is easy to correct as long as you're always solving pain points. It's no problem. On the people side, I think in an early stage, sometimes it's tempting to go hire people who would probably be a better fit at a much larger scale of the company, right? Because no, I mean, resume wise is awesome and stuff like that. But I am coming from a very large post IPO company as well. So I thought, okay, if I can do it, everybody else can do it. But it depends. So you have to be very careful, especially if you're getting somebody very senior, like they are willing to roll up their sleeves and get the stuff done. I'm not saying they can't do it. I mean, I'm doing it and other people do, but that's one thing. So made a couple of mistakes and corrected them. And but as long as you do it in a way where the culture is fine, people understand, and the relationships are good, that will be working out fine. But that's, I think, some of the learnings of timing is important, not just the talent, but the timing of the talent is really important.
Makes sense. Absolutely. So as you continue to now scale, like what is that plan that you have in mind? Is it to bring on a lot more people to help you scale? Is it to look at certain channels or, like partnerships? What have you thought about that?
Oh, yeah. So I like to learn from analogies and learn from nature and stuff like that. So just like in nature, an organism grows from stem cells and then slowly expands. And after some time, the stem cells start to specialize and now they become different organs, right? And then the initial part of an organism growing is slow, but it's exponential, but still slow, right? And over time, it becomes sub-exponential, but becomes big as an organization. And startup is still the same thing. Initial people you hire, these are, I call them stem cells. In fact, I don't like to give, I mean, that's what learning is. Don't give them titles that are very specialized.
Yeah.
Okay, so I give titles now. You're a builder. Okay, what does it mean? I mean, you're a stem cell. Okay, so you'll build whatever is needed, and finally, at some point of scale, which we are now at, we'll start to define these organs and specializations, and now we'll hire specialists for certain things. But you still need enough Swiss Army knives in your team, because there is still lack of resources. One person has to put on many hats to do stuff. So don't super specialize too soon. That was one thing. And in terms of growth, so it is always exponential, but now so we're around 30 people or so. I think it'll continue to remain exponential. We'll grow quickly at this point. We do have a very nice product market fit right now. And also the large companies are super hungry. In fact, so from a partnership perspective, we have a couple of partners who are very deeply engaging with us. One of them is Wipro, and they have, so here's what's happening. 20 years ago, business processes were outsourced, right? Enterprises always are looking for efficiency. How to do efficiency? Okay, I pay X here, I'll pay X by 2, X by 3, X by 4 in that country. Let's move it out. A lot of efficiency made 20 years ago. There are tens of thousands of people in every company like Wipro in India. I mean, I'm saying tens of thousands, are actually close to maybe 100,000 in each of those companies. Yeah. There'll be probably 1 million people out there that just outsourced. Then 10 years ago, people said, oh, wages are rising. Humans, are not like machines. Machines have Moore's law. Every year they'll be cheaper. Humans every year become more expensive. So all your math goes for a toss. So what do? RPA came in, and then we put in wherever you can do RPA, just put it there and become more efficient. RPA now, of course, required developers, which were 5 times more expensive than the outsourced people that you had. And then the ROI confusion was there, but that was done. That's 10 years ago. Now, there is a big problem. The wages have gone up further. The delta between, US and India is not much.
Right.
So the pressure on what do you do with this outsourcing thing? So now there's an AI comes in. So all these companies are saying, I don't want to pay that much.
Yeah.
So please optimize. And that's a huge, huge market for us, right? So we're working with multiple partners there, and they have enough people, but they don't have a tool for those people. And we are the only tool right now. As I said, the tool has to be in the language of those people who are doing the outsourced work manually. If it requires you to go hire developers, that's anyway in shortage. I mean, that's not going to help. So that's where we are coming in and say, here is a tool, we're going to train. We've done a bunch of workshops and training people in various geographies. Like, you can use this thing from now on.
Understand. Amazing. Binny, the one thing that's not necessarily, spoken of very, very commonly is, it's like founder mental health. How do you sort of, ensure that you're keeping your mental health in check?
Yeah, I think it probably comes with personality. You have to be an optimist by nature, number one. Right? I mean, if you worry too much about stuff, you can't do this thing. Okay. But anytime there is a day where, I'm like, oh, this was a bad day, right?
Yeah.
Here is my trick. This is what I do. It's like, okay, I say there was a day when I was looking for funding. I was the only person with this idea and something that nobody wanted to do anything about it. Am I better off compared to that day today? It's like, oh yeah, of course, right? Okay, that's good. Okay, now, am I better off compared to last year? Oh yeah, of course. Am I better off compared to last month? Yes. Okay. Then what happened? Maybe last week I'm not better off. That's fine. That's a blip, right? I mean, in any graph. Yep. So that's the first thing I tell myself. Okay. The next thing is, are there people that are with you in solving this problem. Like 3 years ago, I was alone, right? Now, do you have people? Yes, I have so many people. So am I able to share those problems with them? Yes. If the answer is yes, it's good. You've already reduced the problem. And then the final question is, do you have the talent to figure this out, right? I mean, that's the main thing.
Yeah.
If you have the talent, don't worry. It's a matter of time. You sleep, next day it somehow gets solved. So I don't worry about stuff. In fact, the previous company where I was, and we went IPO and everything, there are 3 times in its lifespan where the company was on the brink of dying.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And then, but we all somehow came together and said, no, we're gonna figure this thing out. It's the team, right? And that's why actually I'm sitting in an office. I like to have that dynamics in the team. Like people go to lunch together, go out for movies together, and so when there's a problem, they'll come together and say, hey, let's figure it out.
Let's
right?
fix it. Yeah, that's for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. If you're sitting behind Zoom screens, then you'll say, okay, let me find where I can figure out an interview, right? But if you're in the same room, you'll figure it out. It's that team dynamics, and I think then problems get solved. Especially if you're very clear that you're solving customer pain points, then the real champion is your customer.
That's for sure.
Yeah, most of our customers, majority of them have renewed with, we have upselled, not just renewed. So that's what matters to me. That's one thing I keep, if that's fine, nothing else matters. Right.
That's amazing, Binny. Wow. What advice would you have for other founders, as they think about their inbound and their outbound sales motions?
I don't think I'm an expert yet to say much. I mean, you probably know more there, but it depends on the kind of technology you're bringing in. Luckily for me, I can learn from my previous company. In both that company and this company, we were creating a new category.
Got it.
So that was hyperconvergence. I mean, it didn't exist. And we had to explain to people, oh, server and storage is now one. It's like, oh, is that VCR TV combo? That's not going to work.
VCR TV combo.
Right? It's like, anyway, but so I learned enough from there. Like, if you're creating a new category, you just have to have the conviction and go and talk to the customer and make them your champion more than anything else. Don't worry about what VCs say. Don't worry about what other companies say. It's like, just solve that problem. And we know, so just have a grab on that. But that's when you're doing something like this. But if you are doing something more of a +1 traditional stuff, then I don't know. I can't comment there. Maybe there are other more well-known ways of doing stuff. But in my thing is, I don't look at noise. Don't worry about what's happening in the world. Even if it takes you 1 year, 2 year to get the limelight or whatever attention, you just go and do what you think is the right for the customer, and somebody sometime will notice.
That's for sure.
Which is different. I mean, yeah, if you have other things where maybe you market first, other technologies that you're going to bring in, because people already know what it is, they can understand what it is. In our case, even today, I haven't talked about a bunch of core computer science, changes that we have done, because the market isn't ready to listen to that yet. We will do that. There are so many computer science firsts in Kognitos that, I can geek out with somebody, but if I geek out with a customer, they might get, like nervous, like what's happening. But yeah, in fact, this is a true story. So when the ChatGPT came out, one of our customers called back, hey, Binny, there's something called ChatGPT. Like, you guys are, doing AI and stuff like that. How can I use it? Tell me. And I said, Chris, you're using it. And he's like, what? I said, okay, now let me tell you how this thing works, right? Your invoice is coming in, we do OCR. OCR is not good, you know that. So how come you think it's working? He said, I don't know. It's like, okay, we do another layer of generative AI on that. I say, oh, wow. Okay, I'll tell my CEO that we're using it. So that's what I like to do, is like, let the customer ask about it and then we'll say, yeah. It's there. But really, they don't care. I mean, they care about the problem being solved, and that's the mindset you need to have. A lot of the technologists think that the technology is cool, right? And that's something I had to unlearn. Like, don't talk about the technology, and then you'll be fine.
Amazing. Binny, what's next for you, and for Kognitos?
Well, as I said, I'm challenging the question, like, why do you need developers for innovation? So it's all about computer literacy. Everybody needs to be able to read computer language. And most people should be able to write computer language. But reading is far more important than writing, right? Okay. Why is that important? I think given where AI is going, it's actually one of the biggest tools we have in keeping humans safe in the presence of AGI. And I mean, that's one thing I'm worried about, where AGI can go. Imagine if you make a superhuman intelligence, and there are a bunch of people working on it, and I do believe it's feasible. When that happens, what happens? So how do people make themselves comfortable that this superhuman intelligence, when it's connected to the APIs or our machines, is not going to do harm? The only way is that, oh, you know what, we'll verify everything that it does. Fine. So the superhuman AI is generating some instructions for machines to run. What is the language of that instruction? Today, it has to be Python or Java or something. And then who's available to review that thing? Again, that bottleneck of developers. And I believe with Kognitos, what we are saying is there is another option. Have the superhuman AI generate natural language instruction for the machines. Kognitos will run that for you. But now who can review it? Most people in the world can review it. So suddenly you've increased the review capability of humanity by 100x. And hopefully you will be that much safer. Okay, so this is a small contribution from us to humanity, that let's make us safer in the presence of smarter and smarter AI, which could have biases and hallucinations. But I do believe that AGI is the wrong direction to go. There are other ways of doing it much better. And we have done it in the industrial age. We have built machines that are much powerful than humans on the manual labor sense. Now here we're talking about mental labor. But in manual labor, we've built machines that are fixed. They do one thing, like a train goes on 2 tracks. Even though it's such a destructive force, it could be 10 meters away from my home, and I don't worry about it, because those 2 tracks are telling it, these are the degrees of freedom you have. So even in AI, we need to control degrees of freedom. Don't create general intelligence, create narrow intelligence. It could be the best CFO in the world. It could be whatever, that's fine, I'll review. But don't create a general intelligence. Why? It's like creating a general giant robot. I mean, people will be worried. So we didn't do that in the industrial age. And I think in this AI age, we should also learn from that, create a narrow focus, have a steering wheel in your hand. The steering wheel is the natural language review. Everybody needs to have that. Once you get familiar with that, you're flexible, say, okay, then you can put it in cruise control, just like in a car, but the steering wheel is always there. I don't find, like, I'll sit in a car without a steering wheel, but I'm okay with it doing self-driving while I'm watching. So that same thing we need to build. And that's what makes me excited about the future, where we can contribute more to society as well. And obviously build a business where, all our employees can make money.
Well, for sure. Binny, every time that I speak with you, I just learn so much. So thank you so much. How can folks keep up with you and with Kognitos?
Go to kognitos.com, Kognitos with a K, and watch us on that space. And also we are active on LinkedIn quite a lot. So do connect to us on LinkedIn.
Amazing. Binny, as always, thank you so much for your time. Such a pleasure to see you once again. And thank you once again.
Thank you, Pratik. Take care.
Appreciate it.